I was a prison guard, and after our warden's daughter was called inside our prison, he began interrogating prisoners for answers. So I tried to intervene, but he blackmailed me, threatened my family, and turned my community against me. So I played his own game and pulled an Uno reverse that devastated his entire life. I used to work as a prison guard, and one day our warden decided it would be a good idea to bring his 10-year-old daughter in so she could see where Dad works. He left her alone in his office for just a minute when she wandered out. He found her 10 minutes later in one of the corridors, bleeding out from her head with the fly on her pants undone. Watching him clutch her against his chest and hold her lifeless body repeating, "Daddy's got you, sweetheart," for hours was a sight I'll never forget. From that moment on, he became obsessed with finding out who did this. He didn't even take a day off from work, just came in next morning off no sleep and spent the whole day grilling every prisoner and guard. He offered bribes, reduced sentences, special privileges, anything for information. I remember watching him break down between interviews, then slam his head into the wall repeatedly, just so the physical pain could momentarily drown out the emotional one for long enough to conduct the next interview. He rounded everybody he thought gave suspicious answers and threatened them with solitary confinement, beatings, firings for guards. He even went as far as forcing a prisoner to wear a wire during yard to hopefully catch an admission, threatening that prisoner with an extra 2 years to his sentence if he didn't wear it. Unfortunately, his interviews didn't get him an answer, so he started becoming more harsh. 2.5 weeks after the death, he came into work hammered and grabbed me by the shoulders, telling me today was the beginning of the end. He then rounded up all the prisoners and announced to them that until the truth about who did it comes out, they would only be getting fed every second day. The backlash was brutal, and the warden took that as a sign that the people protesting were guilty. He got a hold of everyone who stepped out of line and ordered us, the guards, to hit them. Some guards, including myself, felt bad and didn't want to, but he threatened our jobs, saying if we're hesitating, then that means one of us must have culled his daughter. He'd pace around the prison either high or hammered every day, banging on random cells to tearfully beg for someone to tell him who took his daughter. When that didn't work, he began threatening the prisoners' children. He'd call up the prisoners he found most suspicious into his office and vividly describe to them the connections he had outside and what he could do to their families if they didn't confess. Unsurprisingly, this led to the prisoners hating him, with one particular inmate even lunging at the warden in the office. Said inmate ended up getting stabbed in the arm and had 5 years added to his sentence. But that wasn't even the worst part. You see, the warden took this inmate's rebellion as a clear admission that he was the guilty one, and because of that, the inmate, Jeremiah, was brought back to the warden's office a few days later. Nobody saw Jeremiah again for the following days after, so we all assumed he was just thrown in solitary or something. But then one day, while going to get coffee, I heard screaming coming from the underground tunnels below. I went down to investigate, and the more I followed the sound, the more disturbing it got, like nothing I'd ever even envisioned before. I remember going to the door where the sound was coming from, and through the crack, I could see it. The warden had Jeremiah tied to a chair. He was doing horror movie level things to him and screaming at Jeremiah to admit he did it. He had a table of tools next to him, with everything from pliers to knives to blowtorches and even a buzzsaw. It was the most disturbing thing I had ever seen. Jeremiah already had 2 less fingers and marks up and down his body. I froze, but before my conscious mind could make a decision, I started banging on the door. I saw the warden freeze. He slowly came up to the door, looking disheveled and manic. He looked like he was on everything that's hardcore at once, hasn't slept in weeks, and his eyes were that of a psychopath. I yelled, asking him what the hell he's doing, and he screamed back that Jeremiah deserves to pay. I retorted that he had no idea if Jeremiah even did it, and that's when he went silent. I heard footsteps, then saw him going back to Jeremiah, where he started pouring salt into his open wounds, screaming at him to confess. I pounded harder on the already damaged door, my fist aching as the old lock rattled but held firm. The warden's voice rose above Jeremiah's agonized shrieks, screaming, "Confess," over and over. The sound of liquid splashing, followed by an inhuman wail, told me he was pouring more salt into the wounds. Then suddenly, everything went quiet. I heard footsteps approaching the door, slow and deliberate. The warden's breathing came heavy through the crack, and when he spoke, his voice was low and controlled through gritted teeth. "How long have you been standing there?" My mouth went dry. I tried to lie, stammering that I'd just arrived, just heard something strange, but he cut me off with a harsh laugh. "You called me a psychopath 5 minutes ago. I heard everything." Behind him, Jeremiah's whimpers grew weaker, more desperate. I noticed the warden's hand gripping something metal behind the door, keeping it out of my view. Footsteps echoed down the corridor. Peterson appeared around the corner, coffee cup in hand, his usual morning routine. He stopped when he saw me pressed against the restricted door. "What's happening down here?" My heart raced. This was my chance to expose everything, to get help. But then I remembered Peterson's daughter went to school with the warden's surviving kids. The whole prison community was interconnected in ways that made every decision complicated. I forced my voice steady and told Peterson there was a situation, but I had it handled. He needed to go back upstairs. He hesitated, looking between me and the door, but eventually shrugged and headed back the way he came. Jeremiah Jeremiah's moans grew weaker behind the door. If I didn't act soon, he might not survive whatever the warden was doing to him. The door opened slightly. The warden's face appeared in the gap, splattered with blood, his eyes wild, but somehow also calculating. He spoke calmly, which was somehow worse than the screaming. "You can join me, or you can leave. But if you leave, you were never here." 3 realizations hit me simultaneously. My keycard records showed I was in this restricted area when I shouldn't be. The security cameras that normally monitored every inch of the prison were mysteriously off in this corridor. And in the warden's visible hand, he held a bloodied pair of pliers. Self-preservation kicked in. I backed away from the door, my legs shaking. The warden watched me retreat, then added, "Check the morning schedule. You're assigned to help me with a special project in an hour." The implication was clear. He'd planned for potential witnesses. I stumbled back to the break room, my hands shaking so badly I couldn't hold the coffee cup steady. Hot liquid spilled over my fingers, but I barely felt it. Around me, other guards chatted about their weekends, and I heard Daniels mention how the warden seemed better today, more focused. They had no idea what was happening 50 feet below their feet. My phone buzzed, a text from my wife asking if I was okay, worried because I'd missed dinner again. She mentioned my phone had died for the 3rd time this month, and I really needed to get a new one. Normal life continuing while horror unfolded in the basement. I pulled up the personnel files on the break room computer, needing to know more about Jeremiah. His record showed 15 years for armed robbery, multiple infractions inside including 3 fights, and suspected contraband smuggling. The other guards already didn't trust him. The warden had chosen his victim carefully, someone who wouldn't be missed or believed. The main door buzzed, and the head of the prison board walked in unexpectedly. My stomach dropped, but he just smiled and shook hands with the day shift supervisor, praising the warden's handling of recent discipline issues. He mentioned doing a routine inspection of the facilities. I watched him walk past the entrance to the restricted area, completely unaware that torture was happening just 50 feet below. The prison chaplain appeared at the warden's office door, holding papers that needed signing for the memorial service. The warden would have to come up, would have to play the grieving father in public while Jeremiah bled in the basement. The thought made me sick. My hands started trembling again, worse than before. The sounds from the basement had triggered something deep, bringing back memories from my deployment. Collins noticed and put a hand on my shoulder, saying I looked rough. "Just like when you came back from Afghanistan," he said. "This whole thing with the warden's daughter has everyone messed up." My phone buzzed with a notification. The warden had created a new WhatsApp group for all guards titled Safety Updates. But as I watched guards getting added and their read receipts appearing, I realized what this really was. He was tracking who was active, who was responding, who was staying neutral versus supporting him. I tried to head back downstairs to check on Jeremiah, but found new security protocols had been implemented overnight. My keycard no longer worked for that area. When I asked about it, the desk sergeant just shrugged and said the warden had implemented needed changes after the tragedy. Everyone supported him. Who would question a grieving father's desire for increased security? Throughout the day, I watched the warden work the room during shift change. His grief had earned him a special kind of power. The administrative staff now informally checked with him before approving any guard requests. When I tried to adjust my schedule, the secretary asked if I'd run it by the warden first. He'd built a soft power structure through tragedy. By evening, I could barely function. I hadn't slept, haunted by the sounds from the basement. During shift change briefing, I stumbled over my words, mixing up assignments. The arriving guards exchanged glances, probably thinking I'd been drinking. My partner, Thompson, pulled me aside